Welcome to the Diesel Podcast presented by DFC Diesel. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I always look forward to chatting with the Amsoil team, and there's so many different topics that truck owners are interested in. I think maintenance, maintaining our vehicles it's really crucial, something that I've seen doing a podcast for as long as I have, that it's taken more of a center stage in I think what truck owners are thinking about. And I know there's some huge changes coming up here in a few years with emissions and how that's going to affect oil and maybe some other fluids as well. I'm not sure. But I appreciate you guys sitting down with me today and chatting. Look forward to learning more about Amsoil, about oil, about some other products, and how it's going to fit into maintaining our diesel trucks.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Patrick. I'm Alex Thompson, Director of Product Marketing for Automotive and Commercial Products at Amsoil. Real happy to be on the call here today to talk about some really important changes upcoming here in the diesel market. Over the years, we've continued to see pressures on improving fuel economy and reducing exhaust gas emissions. And we've seen new technologies really ever since 2007 with DPFs and all these new after treatment systems on there. And really what that has done over the years is put a lot of pressure on motor oil or engine oil formulation. Moving away from traditional technologies and moving into brand new lower ash technology, which I'll let one of our product development engineers talk more about that here in a little bit. But essentially, we've got another large category change coming on the horizon here with the EPA and the California Air Resource Board imposing even stricter emissions requirements on diesel engines. So we're seeing, expectations of large reduction in NOx gases and diesel particulate matter measured at the tailpipe. So, one of the ways that we can help in this transition is by actually changing motor oil formulation. A lot of people don't consider engine oil as being a contributor to emissions, but it actually can play a factor. And so we're happy to do our part in participating and moving with these new engine oil specifications. So starting in 2027, there's going to be a new category. It's called PC12. Current engine oils are formulated to PC11. That's where we get our API CK4 engine oil specification today. As we move to PC12, we're going to be focusing more on further reduction in sulfated ash, phosphor, and sulfur. We're going to be focusing more on fuel economy improvements. We're going to be focusing more on newer viscosity additions to the heavy duty category. And for a lot of your listeners who are driving 1-ton diesel pickups, you might ask yourself, well, what does PC11 or PC12 mean for me? Because those are really more heavy duty engine oil specifications. The API typically follows pretty closely what the PC category does. So as we see new, like I said, PC11 is very closely tied with the current CK4 specifications on the market today. PC12 is going to be very closely tied, as we expect, to the new API CL4 that should be coming around that same 2027 timeframe. So looking at PC12 gives us a really good indication into what's coming for the 1-ton pickup market as well.
There's a lot of questions I'm thinking of to ask you guys. I wanted to go around real quick and have Garrett and Ryan, if you guys can introduce yourself, let me know what you do at Amsoil, and then I'll make sure and throw some questions out your guys' way, and we'll jump into the topic here.
Absolutely. Patrick, thanks for having us on. My name is Garrett Giebel, product development engineer here at Amsoil. Been with the company about 6 years now. And a lot of what I do ties closely with what Alex and Ryan both do. So a lot of my key products I work on are automotive, diesel, transmission fluid, etc. So um, when my dad was telling people when I first got this job at Amsoil, they said, "What does Garrett do?" And he takes oil in this hand and he takes oil in this hand and figures out which one's more slippery. So, and at the end of the day, that's about what I do.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I am Ryan Radzak. I am the product marketing manager for commercial and heavy duty here at Amsoil. I've only been here about a month, so I'm still learning the ropes. But my job is essentially managing the progression and the evolution of the entire product portfolio for commercial and heavy duty here.
Hey, Diesel fans, we wanted to let you know that our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 20% off your entire cart discount code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code TDP2520, get you 20% off your entire order. They got a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different handle designs, different opening mechanisms. So if you're in the market for a new knife for EDC or hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house, they've got you covered with a bunch of different choices designed to meet any budget. We really appreciate them offering that discount code just for you guys. So if you're in the market, head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code TDP2520 and get 20% off your entire cart. Very cool. I'll have lots of questions for you guys. I think the first one that jumps out from what you mentioned, Alex, is as emissions change, and I think back to the major change in 2007 and the demands that puts on so many different components of a engine and a truck, with EGR, with heat, with regen cycles, with extra injection events, the demand that puts on oil. So as you look towards the future, how much of a change should we expect, or how much is that going to change a formulation or a product to be designed to meet it? Is it a drastic change? Is it where would you rate it on a scale? And then how do you approach the Amsoil product line, because it's such a leading product in the marketplace that I hear about all the time? Is it like a whole new formulation? What goes into meeting something a couple years from now?
Yeah, that'd be a great question for Garrett to take over here on the development side.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot that does go into it. Some use the analogy of baking a cake. You got certain ingredients that at the perfect ratio make a really good cake, and that's effectively how designing an oil is. Oil, for the most part, about 80% of the oil is base oil. And then you've got the other remaining percentage up to 80. It can be more, it can be less of the additives. So you really have to fine tune those additives to that base oil. So it starts with really good base oil. And then to speak specifically to, for instance, like part of the PC12 requirements here of reducing NOx, reducing particulate matter, a lot of that deals with what Alex referenced earlier was SAP, sulfated ash, phosphorus, and sulfur. And what you have with those is like the sulfated ash, that's like a detergent in your oil. Phosphorus, obviously anti-wear, kind of like zinc, ZDDP, everyone, it's got to have zinc in the oil, right? So those two, you got the detergent, you got the anti-wear, and then you've got sulfur, which sulfur can be present as an additive and in base oil as well. And it's sulfur can be good. It can sometimes be harmful. It's an EP additive. But what you have with those is they're metallic. So sometimes, especially in a diesel, they don't always burn. They don't always get absorbed. So they vaporize a little bit and they form solid particles such as particulate matter. So that's one instance where you have to have a lower SAPS oil, especially with newer specifications coming, tighter emissions. The DPF systems on some of these vehicles are so advanced that any type of extra little bit of ash that goes through can clog them. So you need to have a clean burning engine helps. Clean burning fuel using good quality fuel, and then having a good engine oil on top of that, can help with some of that push towards better DPF compatibility and overall performance as well, to help stop clogging the DPF. and prevent, future issues from happening.
I was just thinking about that performance aspect because like I mentioned in the beginning, the focus that I think the market has taken towards reliability, longevity, durability is ultimately, if you're a truck owner, you're trying to avoid an engine rebuild unless you want to build it. You want to spend the money. You have this application,
Correct.
right?
Trying to have some fun.
Yeah, exactly. So you're thinking, okay, how do I get a better product than what's a run of the mill that I might find in a store somewhere or just some off brand I've never heard of? And I think that has taken on a higher importance level with a truck owner, and they're looking towards a product like Amsoil to be able to say, okay, what can I get better than what is average out there? So how does that factor into meeting PC12 and these new changes as well? I'm sure it's a cornerstone of what you're looking at with additive packages and other characteristics of the product that you guys are known for. But I think someone out there is probably curious and saying, okay, now how do they come up with this product, but then still give me the quality and the performance that I've come to expect?
It's a great question, Alex. I can take it, and then maybe you or Ryan can jump in. But it really comes down to the work on the forefront in testing, meeting the specification and the typical Amsoil way, pushing past that and performing higher than any other oils out there in the market. So again, bring it back down to maybe the ad pack. You've got, with the lower SAPs, you kind of have to pivot on, okay, how am I going to get some more detergency in there? How am I going to get some more dispersancy in the oil? So again, it's just the proper blend of certain additives. I can't really get into how we make it, right? But I can talk to, where we like to play. So obviously making sure the anti-wear is in there as well. And then, antioxidants and TBN as well. So again, you have to kind of play in the realm too of not everyone has the same diesel fuel, right? There's certain different treat rates of fuel throughout even the United States and elsewhere. So certain diesel fuel, especially they're high in sulfur, and then when they burn, react with moisture, you get sometimes some sulfuric acid. So having a good oil with some good reservatives in there to help neutralize those acids helps as well. So we make sure we're looking at all aspects of the oil, not just specifically the DPF. So you want to have that performance throughout the whole entire spectrum, and we test for that big time. Years in advance, we're working on what's coming next. So we're covered when the spec does come out.
Yeah. In addition to that, too, it really starts with the quality of the base oils and the quality of the additives that we choose. So, everything that's manufactured in our facility is filtered several times, both from incoming, receiving raw materials. It's filtered again before it's packaged and everything else too. So we start with the highest quality components. We have state-of-the-art manufacturing and filtration processes to ensure that quality carries through to the final product. So all that work that Garrett does in testing doesn't go to waste, right? As we're manufacturing the product. And it's another thing to consider that the industry standards are just that. They're the standard. They set the minimum performance requirements out there, and so we use those as the starting point. And while the chemical box does shrink when you want to claim a certain specification, there is still room within that chemical box to move around and differentiate yourself. And so to Garrett's point, yes, we use the standard as our minimum. There's still room to improve the quality of the components we use that in turn gives better results, even though as an industry we have to reduce overall usage of certain components like phosphorus, sulfated ash.
As these engines change and have changed over the years, and I always think of emission standards as driving changes in the type of engines that the OEMs offer. And I know that could be a number of different factors, whether it's the fuel system, whether it's electronic tuning, whether it's cooling. There's so many different changes that have happened out there. From an oil perspective, what sort of questions should a person ask themselves or ask when they're thinking of a brand to put in their $105,000 truck when it comes to oil? So what is really important for that longevity, that durability that I had mentioned, that I as a consumer should research, find on a website, look on the bottle, and help make that decision of what I'm going to put into my engine?
Yeah. I can start off, and Garrett, if you want to chime in. Really what you're looking for in a high quality oil to protect your $100,000 plus truck is it's not all oils are created equal. And again, when we're looking at industry standards, and if we're looking at technical data sheets of one brand versus another, all of those results on those pages are based on new lube analysis. And so having products that can maintain those characteristics over the course of the service interval is really important. And it's not easy to find that information up front on a data sheet. Sometimes it requires oil analysis or some other type of analysis later on. But when you choose a brand like Amsoil, that product is going. If you bought a 1540, that's going to stay a 1540 over the entire service interval that we spec it for. Not to say that there's others out there deliberately building products that fall out of grade, but we've seen it happen time and time again. If you're a hot shotter or someone else pulling 30,000 pounds with your 1 ton, you want that 1540 or that 540 to stay a 40 weight, right? You don't want it to become a 30 and end up in a boundary lubrication situation. So I'd be looking for that. I'd be looking for the detergency. And then, the topic of today's conversation being emissions focused, getting that DPF to last as long as you possibly can, given the cost of that system, reducing your regens. So having a product that has high oxidative stability, has low NOAC volatility scores, those are all going to be things that I would look for in choosing an oil for my pickup. Garrett, you want to add some more to that?
Yeah, no, everything you hit is perfect. And just as the customer too, what's your driving scenarios? Where are you at? High heat area, cold area? To add to Alex's point, the 540 versus 1540, right? We even have a 040. So for the customers in super cold climates, we have that range available for them as well. So to everything Alex said, to a T, plus, think of the driving conditions as well to add in there.
I was thinking of a question to ask you guys about the DPF and being able to connect it to how does my oil that I run in the engine help my DPF live, so I don't have to buy one and replace it and spend that kind of money. Can you guys explain the relationship between your engine oil and your DPF life?
Yeah, I can take a crack at that one. And there's more factors too than the oil too as well. It's the factors of how the truck operates itself. So there's an analogy or reference in the oil industry called WHAM. So it's water, heat, air, moisture, and all that stuff oxidizes the oil. Varnish can happen in your engine. Soot as well. Soot in a diesel engine can be terrible, abrasive wear, and then obviously it can get into your emission system. So a lot of those factors need to be overcome by a good quality oil like what we have. And then, as I alluded to before, a lot of what it is the sap, so the sulfated ash, phosphorus and sulfur. So a lot of those, when they do burn, and they don't fully vaporize, you get that into your system. So it's a delicate balance of a really good quality additive, and then how much do you put in the oil to then have it be a good amount to where it won't burn off, it won't enter into your system. and have to regen a bunch of times, and then eventually after X amount of miles you're stuck replacing it. So it's that delicate balance of putting in enough, having that good high quality, your external driving conditions that you're faced with, the climate that you're in. A lot goes into it, but the oil can definitely be a part of able to help you in whatever situation you're in.
Makes a lot of sense. I never really thought about it like that. I realize that there's multiple systems that are factoring into that DPF, and I think in general, maybe as just a consumer or truck owner, I've overlooked the oil side of it. I've always kind of thought of, well, the fuel, the idle time, how I operate my truck. Are there quick, short trips, or am I towing consistently with it? That's always factored into my mind as far as how long does this DPF last. But I didn't actually think of the oil itself and how much it's able to, I guess, maybe absorb my driving style or be able to accommodate my driving style, how that can factor into it. So that's a really interesting point that you guys have made.
Yeah, and like Garrett said, driving style and just ambient environment that you own and operate your vehicle in. Condensation. Every time you leave your engine, your truck outside, you've got condensation builds up. That water enters the oil. If you don't have an oil that can handle some water ingress and manage it properly, that or like what Garrett said earlier about the quality of the fuel. If you have some higher sulfur fuel, it can create some additional acids in your oil. If your oil doesn't have the ability to handle those acids, it leads to premature wear, but also leads to increased emissions.
How does it work? Say I take my truck to a diesel shop, and they mostly service newer kind of trucks, and I've got an older one. I've got a pre-2007, and we're kind of looking out towards the future, 3, 4, 5 years from now. And I say, hey, I need an oil change, and they have this new oil that meets the PC12 guideline. Is that factored into developing this as well, where it also still works for an engine that doesn't have the demands of, say, a DPF, or maybe it's maybe it does have a DPF, but it's not as demanding as what it's going to be here in the future? Does that factor into accommodating different year ranges, different emission standards in these products?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. So yeah, actually, PC11 was the first time we saw a split. So for most industry standards, they must be backwards compatible. So at the highest level, yes, a PC12 formulated motor oil must still provide excellent protection for that pre-emissions 2007 diesel engine. But when in PC11, we saw a split. There's PC11A and PC11B. PC11A is your standard 1540, 540 viscosities that were recommended for generations past. PC11B is the equivalent to API FA4, and those are your new lower viscosity formulations and specifications, and those are not backwards compatible. So that category carries on for PC12. There's PC12A, 12B. PC12A is backwards compatible. B is not. So, but yes, that we also have a line of diesel products that are for pre-emissions diesels as well. They're formulated differently, but Garrett can speak a little bit more to it. But it's not necessarily that one is better than the other. It's just different technologies and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, great answer, Alex. For the products you referenced at the end there, the non-compatible, or the ones that are meant for less fuel or less, for the trucks that don't have DPF, I should say, or similar older trucks like that, the pre-emissions, they're built somewhat similar. They still have some of the similar additives. There just might be a little bit more detergents or dispersants in there. And then TBN, there's a little bit more of that in there as well. So and effectively at the end of the day, as I've referenced before, the SAPs, it might be a little bit of a mid or a high SAPs product. So more sulfated ash, phosphorus, and sulfur, to where you can have those in a diesel engine. They'll just exit the tailpipe similarly. It's just they won't get caught in a DPF or an SCR.
Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock, or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it, with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is, sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have, from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increased power, increased torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time, a lot of them are in stock or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. That makes sense. I was thinking about what you mentioned earlier, Alex, with viscosity, and I've had some engine builders on recently talking about engines, newer ones, tolerances, and how crucial the viscosity can be to just having them live. So I wanted to ask you guys that. I'm sure it fits in line with what we're talking about today, but being able to maintain that viscosity over the life of the oil, I think that's incredibly important. And because of some of the topics and questions that our audience has had about that I wanted to spend a little bit more time on it. Can you talk to me about that, having the viscosity of whatever somebody chooses, maintaining itself through that cycle before they change it again, and the focus of that with these products?
Yeah, I think Garrett can talk to it a little bit more technically, but basically the importance is you want to maintain that fluid film over the course of the life of the oil. And as we've discussed briefly on this call, there's a host of contaminants that are constantly trying to break that oil down and thin it out, whether that's fuel dilution, water contamination. If you have higher oxidation and evaporative loss, you lose those lighter components of the oil, and the oil becomes thicker over time. So whether you're dealing with fuel dilution or water contamination, which can thin or thicken the oil depending on the condition, or in the case of oxidation and volatility, it will typically thicken at that point. You start to run into, if oil becomes too thin, you lose your fluid barrier and you get metal on metal contact. Oil gets too thick, you lose your pumpability and you run into a lack of flow condition. And then you'll be running into metal on metal contact there too, and increasing wear.
Correct. And then the oil, can sludge up your engine to cause varnish. That's not good for any engine. So Alex hit the nail on the head there for why the viscosity is important. I will add into, for trucks, temperature matters too, as I mentioned before. Like, say for instance, if you're in the northern part of the States or Canada or cold climate, the winter viscosity can matter. as well for what you're trying to choose. And then at the tail end, if you have, for instance, a built engine, you brought an engine to an engine builder, and you maybe tweak something a little bit, that engine builder is going to know the clearance of those bearings, and you want to reference how those bearings were clearanced and what oil to use, because you don't want to use too thick of an oil for what the bearings clearance for. That's just going to cause a lot of excess heat, loss in fuel economy, and it's effectively looking at that Strybeck curve. You're getting to an area where you might have boundary lubrication, or you might just have too much fluid friction. So you got to find that delicate balance.
That makes sense. Ryan, I was thinking of asking you a question. I know you're still getting your bearings and everything, but being on the diesel side and focusing on that, are there common questions that you're finding some of your customers and clients out there are asking about this topic? Or what's the reception on the diesel side, whether it's heavy duty or whether it's light duty and in pickup trucks? What are you seeing on your side?
Yeah, I think and it's just all in the same vein as this conversation that we're having right now, is a lot of uncertainty within the industry on the consumer and customer side about what the emission standards are going to look like. How is that going to impact the performance and reliability of my truck or my heavy duty equipment? So obviously that's the thing that we're working on here, is to ensure that we're creating oils, developing oils that are still going to continue to not only meet the industry standards, but also, just as importantly, if not more importantly, our customers' expectations of us in developing the best lubricants out there.
Is the fleet side, does that play a huge role in this as well? In my mind, it does, because if I think of a company that has 100 trucks or 1,000 trucks, or there's a fleet of semi trucks out there, I think the maintenance costs and the downtime and the reliability become amplified versus like myself, a single truck owner. Yeah, it might be important to me because it's my daily driver, but I'm not managing 50 of these things or 100 of them or more.
Yeah, that's definitely an important consideration. A lot of these specifications, like I said earlier, start on the heavy duty side, so the fleet management side, and when we're targeting tenths of percentages of fuel economy improvements, to the typical diesel pickup owner, that's not a lot. But when you're managing several hundred truck fleet, every tenth of a mile to the gallon or tenth of a percent of fuel economy you can gain is massive savings. And one of the other focuses for PC12 is, again, extending that life of that DPF system. So the goal with PC12 is to keep those DPF systems functioning for up to 800,000 miles on HD applications. So, when we're talking over the road Class 8 line haul trucks, any improvement in fuel economy and any improvement in uptime on the road is going to be huge for those fleet managers. And again, it all comes down to preserving that emissions system.
How big of a jump with that 800,000 mile expected life? How much of a jump is that from the previous standard or previous goal? Is it a huge jump? Or what I'm trying to understand with this change is how much of a lifespan increase is expected with a DPF by changing these standards.
That's a great question. It's fairly significant. I mean, it's a couple 100,000 mile extension in DPF life.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm not sure if this translates over to the pickup truck market, but I don't know many diesel truck owners with newer diesel trucks that have 800,000 miles on them. It doesn't typically go that high. But if we were to try to relate it to that segment, is there any sort of, I don't want to pinpoint it down because I know you guys can't, but is there an expectation or a hope that I should have under ideal conditions, driving my truck, within the framework of how it should be driven and operating it, where I can expect an increased life out of my DPF of X amount of miles or X amount of time? Does it get that technical or that focused where we could make that assumption?
That's tough to do. A lot of what I'm seeing is it's based on the weight of the vehicle, right? So under a certain amount of pounds, you've got a certain lifespan. But for the heavy duty, the big application, to Alex's point, it's increased for a couple 100,000. Being able to kind of translate that to what I would consider light duty, or the smaller diesel trucks, it's going to be really hard to do that. There is a standard that you're going to have to meet, but to cross it over, it's going to be tough. I couldn't answer that right now.
Yeah, and to be fair, the new API specifications have not been, even the guidance hasn't been released yet on that. So it's a bit of speculation at this point. But like I said earlier, for the most part, API follows the general guidelines of whatever the updated PC category is. So the general theme again is to extend the life of that system. But as Garrett mentioned, correlating that down to the 1-ton truck is going to be a little bit more of a challenge.
One of the products that you guys have that I've heard from a lot of listeners that they like and they understand the connection to the reliability of their truck is a bypass system, and being able to filter that oil more. And for some of them, being able to do extended oil changes with oil analysis and following along with that. Does that change at all, or does it just stay the same as these standards changed? If I had, an older vehicle, older truck, I'm operating it, a couple years from now, the standards have changed, there's this new oil, can I still stay on my maintenance schedule is I think where I'm aiming with this question, with some of these other products and components that you guys offer to be able to protect the oil, make it last longer potentially, and be able to lower the maintenance costs like we mentioned for fleets through the use of those products.
Yeah, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, yes. I mean, any of our next generation formulations have to meet or exceed its previous generation. So if you're currently running, Signature Series 1540 diesel engine oil in your pickup now, and we upgrade to PC12 formulation in 2027, we're not going to be pulling any of the product features and benefits that you were used to. So in terms of service interval. And then when it comes to bypass in general is, I'm glad you stated it. You can extend drain intervals with oil analysis, but just adding a bypass system to your truck doesn't guarantee you extended service intervals. What a bypass system gives you is a guarantee of the cleanest oil possible running through your engine. So reducing wear. And then also what it does, depending on what system you put on your vehicle, you're adding to your sump capacity, anywhere from a couple quarts up to, some of ours, even the heavy duty ones, you're adding over a gallon of additional oil to the system. So you've got more fresh oil in the system, and then the filter itself, instead of filtering 20 microns at 98% efficiency, you're down to 2 microns at 98% efficiency or 99% efficiency. So you're getting much cleaner oil. You have more oil in the system, which again guarantees you the best protection over the course of the service interval. And then, with oil analysis, we have seen several customers, have great results at further extending their service interval.
What made me think of that was, as we talked about DPF life and focusing on that with these changes, is some of these other components and products that can help me maintain the status of my oil could potentially help even more so if conditions are correct and I'm doing what I need to do as a owner and operator, truck owner, with oil analysis. So I was thinking ahead a little bit to that. And now this next question, it's not focused in particularly on oil. It's kind of a tangent, but I think it factors into it because in my mind, specifically on the pickup truck side, when I see changes, say in transmissions, and they go from 6 to 8 to 10 speeds, and some of the other components that are on there, I know you guys offer fuel additives, there's transmission fluid, there's coolant, there's lots of other things. Did those necessarily change like oil with the discussion we've had today, or does that factor into any of these major changes we see in the automotive market? Like, I think of the Ford 10-speed, the GM 10-speed, and the clearances that are with clutch packs and some of the heat and the challenges they have. Does Amsoil look at those as well in the context of changes in the market and say, okay, what can we do with this new transmission? Or, Ford or GM or Cummins makes a change, and what are we going to do with the coolant side or different components like that? Because I find a lot of listeners, they don't just do Amsoil oil. They also do the transmission fluid. They're getting the gear oil. They're going on the website where you can search by, your year, make, and model, and they're going through, and you guys have, a list of how much I need. And so I wanted to accommodate those listeners that we have that are using more of your products than just oil.
Yeah. I'll take a crack, Alex, and then I'll let you maybe speak to the marketing side. But what a lot of with those transmissions and differentials. So yes, we're testing anything new that comes out. We're making sure that we're sufficient for those applications. But especially the transmission, and even in some of these newer differentials, it's all about the compatibility with the clutch material that you're seeing in there. Effectively, the coefficient of friction that you're seeing, and then with these newer transmissions with the 8 speeds, the 10 speeds, the fluid's becoming thinner. The efficiency, the people want more efficiency out of that, better fuel economy. So either it's a two-factor thing. You have to lower the viscosity of the fluid. The fluid's going to be a lower viscosity in there, and then making sure that you are compatible with that clutch material, because nothing's worse than slipping clutches. And then that just leads to more issues, and then the fluid gets dirty and plugs up your pump, and you're down on your truck now. Same thing with the differential. There's the friction material in there as well that you need to make sure you're compatible with. So those are definitely on the forefront of when we see something new come out. We fully ensure that our fluid's good for that material as well. The extreme pressure, the anti-wear, all that stays the same in there. You still have, the rolling gears, the hypoid gears. That's all fine and dandy as well, and we're make sure we're good there. But a lot of it does come down to the friction material and then the viscosity that you need.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that too, what we've seen over the years is transmissions have gotten smaller, yet there's more gears in them, right? Sump sizes have gotten smaller. So your towing capacities and GVWRs continue to climb. So you're expecting more and more performance and capability out of a smaller and smaller unit with less and less fluid. So again, maintaining heat, maintaining viscosity, protecting that smaller transmission, using less fluid. I mean, you're seeing more transmission coolers and stuff, yes, but you're asking a lot out of less fluid. And same goes for the rear end. Yes, it's anti-wear or properties in the oil, but that differential now is pulling upwards of 30,000 pounds instead of 15 years ago. Much less. So it really again comes down to quality, maintaining that viscosity and those technical properties over the course of the service interval. And that's another thing, I'll end on this for transmission and gear lubes. But we're seeing the service interval of those components grow astronomically. 100,000 plus miles between services is not uncommon now, unless you're constantly putting your boat in the water or something and getting some water ingress into your rear diff or something like that. But asking these fluids to go longer in hotter conditions under heavier loads, it's more important now than ever to have a high quality transmission and gear oil in your pickup truck. And another thing on the fuel side, I'll say though too, as Garrett mentioned earlier, inconsistency across the country in fuel quality. Constantly using a cetane improver, making sure that you're getting the most complete burn possible. Those are probably the best things you could do for your engine, is have a clean, high quality, high performance engine oil, run a cetane and injector cleaner product. and then having those driveline fluids. That's really the full package for your truck.
I think that's a extremely overlooked part of the consumer side, and not necessarily for the enthusiasts, because they're turning into podcasts or watching your YouTube channel. They follow, news in the industry. But when you get a diesel truck because you need it to tow something or using it for work, and they are the most advanced they've ever been, they make the most power they've ever made. They have great technology, all these things that make them vastly better than something 20 years ago. But we don't necessarily know or are told the demands that is put. Like, I love the way that you phrased, that these components can get smaller, or there's different technology or technological challenges that exist. And so you have to have fluids to be able to meet those demands, and how it factors into a maintenance package. And I think that gets even exponentially more important for fleets. But I think for the casual, truck owner, or they're not heavily involved in research and things like that, just understanding how your transmission, your differentials, your coolant, the fuel quality also factor into what we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, which is engine oil and meeting demands in the future, and how you can really limit expenses by focusing on quality products to achieve that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there.
When if somebody if they want to learn more, and maybe it's not about this standard in the future, maybe it's about a current truck or something that's older, and they want to connect with you guys. Maybe it's a really technical question, something I didn't even think to ask you guys on here, but they want to know, how can they connect with Amsoil, reach you guys? Maybe it's you, Garrett, maybe it's you, Ryan, maybe it's you, Alex, or someone else on the team, to be able to connect and ask those questions, see if the product, how it can be integrated into their fleet or into their ownership of their truck. What's the best way to contact you guys?
The best way to reach out to us, first and foremost, we have a very active blog called the Inside Track. So if you're ever curious about just reading up on some of the topics that we're talking about, whether it's diesel related, power sports related, anything like that, I would check that out. We also have a technical line at Amsoil, so we have a full staff of very highly qualified technical representatives that can help answer any question you have regarding any of your applications that you have. Otherwise, you can always reach out on social media as well. We're a very active social team, and we field questions there as well.
Perfect. I did want to ask you before we wrap up, is with the oil analysis side, is that something that you guys offer? Like, if I've never done one, I want to know where things stand in my engine. Is that something, if I go to amsoil.com, I can find a section on there and be able to get a kit ordered and get that going?
Yeah, we do have a company called Oil Analyzers. It's a division of Amsoil. So we do offer a few different oil change or oil analysis kits. And we do subcontract out all of the sampling to a third-party lab, so that we remove any sort of bias that could potentially, be thought of in the analysis. So you can purchase the kit from Amsoil, but it will be reviewed by an external lab, so that we don't have any sort of confusion.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys chatting with me today. I loved the technical discussion, learning more about what's coming up here in the future, and then how on top of it you guys are. So when these standards hit, and when it hits the pickup truck side, what we can expect. So it was a great conversation today. I appreciate all of your guys' time. Look forward to doing it again in the future.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick.
Don't forget, diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code TDP2520 to get 20% off your entire cart. If you're in the market for a new knife for hunting, fishing, EDC, something around the job site, around the house, they got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, handle design, different opening mechanisms, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. We really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. So again, if you're in the market, head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code TDP2520 and get 20% off your order. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Tyler Lowen at 23 Diesel, Robert Cutter Up Rob, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps. Follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.